All right, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome back, everybody, to the Dharma Doors. I'm MC Owens, and this is the San Francisco Dharma Collective. And tonight we're going to read another sutta. I'm very excited about tonight. The sutta tonight, it's still from the Majjhima Nikāya, the Middle Length Discourses. We're moving on to sutta number 106. This is the way to the imperturbable. So just a little quick background on this sutta. So this used to be my favorite sutta. I used to teach this sutta all the time. If you've been coming to Dharma Doors for a while, you're going to probably notice a lot of, well, just a lot of similarity with things that I've said before, or just the way that I've like taught before. So, this sutta tonight, in many ways, it really sort of taught me the Dharma. Like it was one of those suttas, it was the first to really like penetrate and get through. I've taught it, I think, even twice at SFDC or, maybe in the older days and then SFDC. So this will be probably the third time, but it's so good. Let's quickly actually mention. So this is a sutta about the Āneñja, it's called. This idea of being immovable or unstirrable or imperturbable, or using a modern term, untriggerable, like not being triggered in that way, right? But this idea got introduced last week. So last week's sutra, the Buddha introduced this idea of the imperturbable. And he basically, not to go back over last week's sutta, but the Buddha was kind of setting up a kind of an opposition between the worldly and the transcendent. And then the transcendent was described as the imperturbable, this sort of a state beyond the world, and most importantly, not affected or moved by the world in that way. So, last week's sutra sort of introduced the topic. Tonight, we get the full lesson on this idea of the imperturbable. So, it's a relatively short sutta, but it's dense. There's a lot going on, and there's just a lot of really interesting ideas. So, let's dive in. So again, this is Sutta number 106, the Āneñjasappāya Sutta, the way to the imperturbable. Um, yeah, actually, I'll mention this now. It's going to be important. So if you happen to have the Wisdom publication version, or if you have access online, this sutta is, how can I put this? I want to put this simply but quickly. This sutta is commented on a lot. It has a long tradition of commentary. And tonight, I want to teach it where we don't pay any attention to the commentary. I will probably mention something about it here and there, but I really want us to just read what's on the page. Like especially if you've come on Sunday nights, we've been reading sutra after sutra after sutra. We know our stuff, right? So let's just read it. If there's something of interest, I'll share it with you. But otherwise, let's just hear what the Buddha has to say. So it goes a little something like this. Thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One, the Buddha, was living in the Kuru country. The Kuru country is way up north, like almost up into Afghanistan, like really far northern India. So the Buddha was living in the Kuru country where there was a town of the Kurus named Kamasadama. There the Blessed One addressed the bhikkhus thus. Bhikkhus, Venerable Sir, they replied. And the Blessed One said this. Bhikkhus, sensual pleasures are impermanent, hollow, false, deceptive. They are illusory, the prattle of fools. Sensual pleasures here and now, and sensual pleasures in lives to come. Sensual perceptions here and now, and sensual perceptions in lives to come, both alike are Mara's realm, Mara's domain, Mara's bait, Mara's hunting ground. On account of them, these evil, unwholesome mental states, such as covetousness, ill will, and presumption, arise, and they constitute an obstruction to a noble disciple in the training. All right, so this is another one of those suttas where the Buddha just comes out swinging. Nobody's asked anything. He's just, listen up, everybody. And that is the whole topic of the sutta, right there. Now, we're going somewhere with this, but there's so many ideas in that opening paragraph. There's so much language that we kind of need to talk about. So the first thing, of course, we need to establish is that the Buddha is talking about kama. K, long A, M, long A, kama. Sensual pleasures. Now, linguistically, this is related to the word karma. You know the word karma, action. But the relationship is that karma, action, is in pursuit of kama, the pleasure that you would get from when you get it. So kama is what is being translated as sensual pleasure. And I really kind of also want to quickly remind everybody that this topic of kama, it's a very important one. And you might be familiar with something known as the Kama Sutra. This, of course, is not a Buddhist sutra. This is a good, if you don't know this, this is a good lesson. The word sutra is not necessarily a Buddhist word. It's used all throughout India. It's just a word that sort of just means a bunch of things about a topic, all sort of stitched together or sewn together. So you get Yoga Sutras, also not Buddhist, but the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali are a bunch of sayings about yoga that have all been stitched together into a collection or a sutra. And that's about yoga. Again, not a Buddhist text. And this is the famous Kama Sutra, a famous Indian book about sexual pleasure. That is the primary meaning of kama, is sexual pleasure. But I do want to make it clear that in the Buddhist context, kama is not just sexual pleasure. That's why we use this translation of sensual pleasures. So it's not just about sexuality. It could be about food or entertainment or drugs or whatever it might be. So first thing we want to make clear is that the Buddha is talking about any kind of sensual pleasure. But what does the Buddha say about such sensual pleasures? The first and most important thing, and in fact, if you read this in the original Pali, the very first thing the Buddha says is impermanent. Anicca bhikkhave. So impermanent, bhikkhus, is sensual pleasure. Hollow, false, deceptive, an illusion. But the main topic is the impermanence of sensual pleasures. And I want to pause here for a moment because this will really help us, I think, get into the sutta tonight. What it is that we want to think about whatever it is. Again, maybe it's sexuality, right? So maybe it's having sex or masturbating or whatever it is, but that's one form of pleasure. Or maybe it's some delicious food and you just love snacking and, having sweets or something. What we want to notice about any kind of sensual pleasure is the fact that it's fleeting. So in other words, like, let's take sexuality for a second, right? So you're sitting around and you're like, wow, I would really like to discharge some sexual energy. So now it's not pleasant. It's not pleasant yet because I'm trying to figure out how to make this happen. And then there's that brief moment where it's happening and it feels good. And then we're back where we were. The sensual pleasure is impermanent. It is fleeting. And within minutes, we are right back where we started. And again, this is not just about sexuality. It's about any of these pleasures that they actually don't last very long. And so within minutes, we are looking for the next one. That's the idea. And so the Buddha says, kama, sensual pleasures, they're impermanent. They're shallow, not deep, surface level. They're shallow, or what is translated as hollow. They're deceptive. They are maya. They're illusory. The prattle of fools, right? And then the Buddha makes an interesting distinction. He makes a distinction between kama, like the actual pleasure, and then the idea of sensual perception. This is going to actually be important for where the sutra is going to take us tonight. So sensual pleasure is when you're actually like in the state of the yummy flavor or the feeling or whatever it is. So that's the kama. But then there's kama samnya, the perception of what, ooh, that'll make me happy. Ooh, ooh. So perceiving pleasure, looking for it in that way. So because of where this sutra is going, we really need to identify this sort of well, I'll mention it now, but I'll probably bring it back up in a little bit. When we're talking about perception in Buddhism, we're talking about like perceiving something, you know, perceiving something. And then what we're actually talking about right now is perceiving something and then that thing causing sensual desire. And what we want to notice is that there's sort of like an initial step, which is what am I even looking at? And then once it's determined what you are perceiving, now there can be this desire for it in that way. But what I want you to notice is that what you might be perceiving two faces, and you might have feelings about that. Whereas I might be perceiving some sort of glass in the middle, and I'm having feelings about that. So, in other words, the object isn't out there exactly. So, the perception of desire, this idea of sensual perceptions, we're going to want to be really clear that they're not out there exactly. So just hold on to that. So then the Buddha's talking about sensual pleasures or sensual perceptions. And then he says both alike, both of them are Mara's realm. They're Mara's domain, Mara's bait, Mara's hunting ground. Now, of course, Mara, I know all of you know this, but Mara, of course, is sort of like the devil of Buddhism in that way, the antagonizer of the Buddha. Mara, the very word Mara means death. So I often like to point out that in Buddhism, Mara is like a personification of the fear of dying, the fear of loss. That's Mara. And the Buddha is saying that this realm of sensual pleasures, yeah, this is Mara's domain. This is Mara's realm. Okay, so we are about to embark on the journey. But in order, let me just share with you where we're headed. Again, there's a lot of different ways to interpret and understand this sutra. Most of the time, if you read all of the footnotes here, what we're about to embark on is normally described as a process of moving through the jhanas or the dhyanas, through these meditative stages. And it is. But something that I think is important to notice that's happening, and I'm going to tell you this at the beginning. What's really about to happen in this sutta is we are about to travel through what the world of Buddhism calls the triple realm, the three realms. That's the realm of desire, the realm of form, and the formless realm. The realm of desire is what the Buddha is currently talking about. The realm of desire, the kama dhatu, that's Mara's realm. That's Mara's domain. And there are so many problems with Mara's domain in that way because it is impermanent, hollow, and so forth. So the Buddha, having made his comments about the realm of desire, starting in paragraph 3, he says this: "Therefore, bhikkhus, a noble disciple considers thus." So a noble disciple thinks this way: sensual pleasures here and now, and sensual pleasures in lives to come, they're deceptive, they're hollow, they're impermanent. They constitute an obstruction to a noble disciple in the training. I know. Suppose I were to abide with a mind abundant and exalted, having transcended the world and made a firm determination with the mind. When I do so, there will be no more evil, unwholesome mental states such as covetousness, ill will, and presumption in me. And with the abandoning of them, my mind will be unlimited, immeasurable, and well developed. let's talk about that really quickly. So for me, this is it. This is what it's all about. This idea of, well, actually, let me say a few things. The first thing I want you to notice is that, and if you didn't catch this, when the Buddha says a noble disciple considers thus, when the Buddha says that, he's giving instructions for vipassana. That's an instruction for vipassana, for insight meditation. And I want to kind of mention that this is the way the Buddha always teaches, meaning he gives these sort of prescriptions or these advice for ways to think. And this continues even in like the Diamond Sutra, in the Vajra Sutra. The same thing happens where the Buddha says, oh, this is how a bodhisattva should think. So it's a common thing. And here the Buddha says, a noble disciple should think this way. So first of all, they should consider what I just said about sensual pleasures being impermanent, hollow. They should think about that. And then suppose this is the way they think. What if I were to abide with a mind abundant, exalted? That's what we want. So, first off, a mind abundant is a mind that doesn't need anything, doesn't need a goodie, doesn't need anything, is abundant. So that's the first aspect of this mind. It doesn't need any input. It's already full. It's abundant. And it's exalted. There's a little bit of language that actually it popped up in last week's sutta. It's the language where the Buddha says, I think he uses the language. Well, he's going to use it. He didn't use it yet. He will use it, and he sort of alludes to it. It's where he says this idea that sensual pleasures are the prattle of fools. He will also later on describe it as it's how he described it in last week's sutta, the low life. It's the low life that like needs stuff. So this idea that sensual pleasures are the low life or that sensual pleasures are the prattle of fools, that's what the Buddha means by, or the opposite of that is an exalted mind. So the first thing is it's a mind that doesn't need anything, but it's also a noble mind, a mind like worthy of reverence because it is so removed in that way. So suppose I were to abide with what if I had just had an abundant mind that didn't need anything, right? Suppose I abided with a mind abundant and exalted, having transcended the world and made a firm determination with the mind. Now, I will give you a little bit of commentarial suggestion on that line. That line of making a firm determination, the commentary tradition is that this is a mind that is set on achieving the fourth jhana, the imperturbable. I'm willing to go along with that. That's fine. That seems to be a very reasonable understanding of that. So the practitioner considers the impermanence, the fleeting impermanence of sensual pleasures, and says, what if I were to abide with an abundant, exalted mind, transcend the world, and make a firm determination for imperturbability? When I do so, when I do that, there will be no more evil, unwholesome mental states. And then the Buddha repeats what he started at the beginning with, such as covetousness, ill will, and what they translate as presumption. The word is sort of like rushing to judgment, a sort of like, and there's a bit of like anger to it as well. So presumption's fine. The word's a little more nuanced than presumption, but so if I were to abide with an exalted, abundant mind, mental states such as covetousness, ill will, and presumption, they wouldn't arise in me. And with the abandoning of those, my mind will be unlimited, immeasurable, and well developed. When one practices in this way and frequently abides thus, the mind acquires confidence in this base. Once there is full confidence on that base, the practitioner either attains to the imperturbable right now, or else they resolve upon it with wisdom. And then, on the dissolution of the body, after death, it's possible that the evolving consciousness may pass on to rebirth in the realm of the imperturbable. And this, bhikkhus, is declared to be the first way directed to the imperturbable. All right, I told you it's a little dense. So there's a couple of ideas that get established there. One that we want to pay attention to is the line about, and when they practice in this way and frequently abide thus, the mind acquires confidence in that base. So my understanding of that is it's not just going to be once. It's not just one moment of abundant, exalted mind that doesn't need anything. No, we're making repeated visits to such a state. We're making a habit of that becoming the state that we kind of go to in that way. And the idea is that just like anything else, if you are, let's say, oh, I'm bored, or oh, I'm not pleased, right? It's like I'm bored or I'm sad or whatever. It's like, oh, I know, hee hee, hee hee. So I get pleasure from the scrolling, and it takes me out of my depression. Yeah, right. But the idea is that if every time I get bored or a little whatever, if I go and start scrolling, I'm making that a habit. I'm conditioning myself so that every time I get bored or depressed, I know, oh, I know. Well, this is talking about making it a habit of abiding with an abundant, exalted mind that doesn't need anything in that way. And again, it's not just going to happen once or twice. It's about making a habit of that. And then the language that we use is that one acquires confidence in that base. Meaning, oh, that is actual pleasure. The state of not needing anything. And that idea of meditating on the impermanence and the fleeting, hollow, illusory nature of sensual pleasures. So reflecting on that, and then abiding calmly, not needing anything, abundant and exalted. That's the first path or the first way to the imperturbable. That last part gets a little complicated. I do want to mention because it's kind of interesting. So the Buddha is basically saying that if somebody keeps practicing this, They will either make it to the fourth jhana, the state of the imperturbable, like complete imperturbability. They'll either reach that in this life, or upon the dissolution of the body, after death, it's possible that the evolving consciousness might make it to the realm of the imperturbable. Really quickly, this is an early Buddhist idea, and it explains the continuity of rebirth experience. And basically what it is, really quickly, as you know, in the Buddhist tradition, the sentient subject is understood to be an aggregation of these five skandhas, the body of form, sensations of the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and brain, perception, samnya, which we were talking about earlier, the state of conditioning, or the habits, that's number 4, and then the 5th one, consciousness, vijnana. In the early Buddhist tradition, upon the dissolution of the body, after death, there is no more rupa kaya, that this falls apart. And so there's no more sensations of this body, and there's no more perception because there's no more eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, or brain to be doing any perceiving. Conditioning is a little tricky, but in general, the Buddhist tradition understands that upon the dissolution of the body after death, the vijnana, that 5th aggregate, continues like a radio wave. The signal has been sent from the antenna, but the antenna is no longer, and there is a signal. It is an unaware, unconscious signal of vijnanic awareness. And this is the evolving consciousness that they're referring to. This is the consciousness that traverses the bardo, if you're into Tibetan Buddhism and the more tantric Vajrayana traditions. They make a big deal of the disembodied consciousness in between births. That's what they're talking about here, by the way. And they're basically saying that that disembodied vijnanic consciousness might just get reborn in the 4th jhana of the imperturbable if they didn't make it while they were alive. So that's going to get repeated, by the way, with each of these. The idea that the evolving consciousness might make it if the person doesn't make it in their lifetime. So, all right. Everybody doing okay with that first access point to the imperturbable? Meditating on the impermanence of sense desires, abiding with an exalted, abundant mind. All right. Number 2. Again, bhikkhus. A noble disciple considers thus: there are sensual pleasures here and now, and sensual pleasures in lives to come. There are sensual perceptions here and now, and sensual perceptions in lives to come. Whatever material form there is, all material form is the 4 great elements, and the material form derived from the 4 great elements. When one practices in this way and frequently abides that way, the mind acquires confidence in that base. Once there is full confidence, the practitioner either attains to the imperturbable right here and now, or else they resolve upon it with wisdom, and on the dissolution of the body after death, it's possible that the evolving consciousness might pass on to rebirth in the imperturbable. This bhikkhus is this second way directed towards the imperturbable. What was the second way, you may ask? It's quick. So now the Buddha says, all right, now the practitioner who has already understood sensual pleasures and sensual perception now turns their attention to rupa, material form. And this is why I wanted to kind of teach this sutra the way that I would read it, which is that we are journeying through the three realms. Yes, this maps onto the jhanas, but what's more important is that the Buddha started us, or it started where we start, in the realm of desire. But by meditating on the impermanence of such pleasures and things, we transcended the world of desire. The presumption is that at the end of that first section, we've made it out of the kamadhatu. We've made it out of the realm of desire. So where are we? In the realm of form, the realm of material form. So this is the next realm. So the realm of desire, transcended, is the realm of form. The realm of form, of course, is the realm of materiality. Remember this one? Well, insofar as that you think that these are like faces or a glass or whatever, that's all realm of desire. The realm of form is the shape. And there is a difference in the shape of these things. Now, if you think that this looks like a face, just understand that not everybody sees that. In other words, there is a realm of matter. You would probably think of it as the realm of molecules and atoms and particles, upon which the minds of all beings, by the way, not just humans, but all creatures, are projecting onto the material world their wants, their desires, their needs, their concepts of use value. All of that's the realm of desire. What could I use it for? Ooh, is it pretty? Is it ugly? Is it useful? Is it harmful? Whereas underneath that is just the realm of matter. And a molecular structure in that way isn't beautiful or ugly. It's not useful or harmful. It just is. That's what the Buddha is talking about in terms of how the practitioner is now thinking. Well, having already considered sensual pleasures, they now consider that whatever material form there is, whatever material matter, all material form is the same four great elements. I always mention the four elements is like the Indian system, but if you want to substitute the periodic table of elements, it's the same idea, meaning that when we're just talking about the elemental world, the most important thing, and this is kind of how you achieve the imperturbable from here, it's about this idea of the realm of water, for example. So this is just water. And the idea is that the water is just, it's just water. And there's water in here. saliva, tears, right? But there's a way in which some of that water I call me. And then other water is not me. But all of that's realm of desire stuff. That's all kamadhatu stuff. When it's understood that it's like, oh, water, water, and water is just water. This leads to a kind of equalizing or an equanimity or a samatha, a sameness to the realm of the four elements. And that's what the Buddha is describing in this second way to the imperturbable. It's about understanding that all material form is the four great elements, and the material form, all of it is derived from the same four elements. All right, so that's the second way. Noam, question, idea about that?
I'm thinking about the perception, the skandha of perception, and I'm trying to figure out. It seems to me that perception does not is not limited to one or another realm. Like you could perceive things in the realm of desire, you could perceive things in the realm of form. Is that true?
That is very true. I'm glad you're asking the question because you are causing the theme of perception to come back. Your question's really interesting because it's exactly what the sutra is about. It's why I wanted to mention perception at the beginning. It's why I wanted to get us in the mood of like, oh, perception. Perception is not just seeing what's out there. No, perception is deciding what's out there in that way. So hold on, Gnome. It'll get revolved, but your question is totally appropriate. Yes, perception keeps going.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so we've moved from the realm of desire into the realm of form. Now we're meditating on the four elements. That's the second way to the imperturbable. There's number three, one more way to the imperturbable. Again, bhikkhus. A noble disciple considers thus: sensual pleasures here and now, and sensual pleasures in lives to come, sensual perceptions here and now, and sensual perceptions in lives to come, material form here and now, and material form in lives to come, the perception of material form here and now, and perceptions of material forms in lives to come. Both alike are impermanent. You know, what is impermanent is not worth delighting over. It's not worth welcoming. It's not worth holding on to. When one practices in this way and frequently abides thus, the mind acquires confidence in this base. Once there's full confidence, one either attains to the imperturbable right here and now, or else they resolve upon it with wisdom, and on the dissolution of the body after death, it's possible that the evolving consciousness may pass on to rebirth in the imperturbable. This bhikkhu is declared to be the third way directed to the imperturbable. So, the same wisdom of impermanence, it gets applied to even the realm of material form. So, in other words, even at the level of form, all of this is impermanent. So, in the first kind of section, the Buddha was talking about how like pleasures are fleeting and impermanent. So don't go chasing after fleeting moments of pleasure. So then the Buddha brings us to the realm of form. And then he says, yeah, that's impermanent too. So definitely don't welcome that. Don't hold on to that. Okay, so if you didn't anticipate it, that is us transcending the realm of form. So the realm of form is more subtle. It's less dukkha inducing, right? It's less suffering inducing, the realm of form. But the Buddha is still going to encourage us to go further. And so, next up, again, bhikkhus. A noble disciple considers thus. You know, sensual pleasures here and now, and sensual pleasures in lives to come, sensual perceptions here and now, and sensual perceptions in lives to come, material forms here and now, and material forms in lives to come, perceptions of forms here and now, and perceptions of forms in lives to come, and perceptions of the imperturbable. All are perceptions. Where these perceptions cease without remainder, that is the peaceful. That is the sublime. Namely, the base of nothingness. All right. We'll finish that paragraph in a second. So, now the practitioner is thinking sensual pleasures, sensual perceptions. We're way past all those. Material form, perceptions of material form. Yep. And then even the exalted state of the imperturbable. That's another perception. Sarva samya, it says. Everything's a perception. By the way, it is from here that you eventually get mind-only Buddhism. The Yogacara mind-only school, it's right here. It's the realization that all of that, sensual pleasures, material forms, even this idea of the imperturbable, it's just more perceptions in that way. And so in this new situation, we are moving beyond perceptions. And our first stop beyond perceptions is the base of nothingness. Now, last week, last Dharma Doors, I spent a decent amount of time talking about the idea of nothingness, and I contrasted it with the idea of empty space and this idea of emptiness. I'm not going to repeat all of that, but the one thing I said last week that I will repeat, it's about how the base of nothingness, which is we are now in the formless realm, the arupa dhatu. So arupa, no rupa, the no rupa zone. So we are in this arupa dhatu, the base of nothingness. And the thing to understand about that, there's no seeing or anything to be seen. There's no hearing or anything to be heard. There's no smelling or anything to smell. There's no tasting or anything to taste. There's no feeling with the body. And there's nothing there to be felt. And there is no sixth mental faculty. That's the nothingness. That's why there's no perception, because there's nothing to be perceived and nothing to perceive it. That's all way back in the realm of desire and the realm of form. So now the meditator is in this base of nothingness. When one practices in this way and frequently abides in the base of nothingness, the mind acquires confidence in that base. And once there's full confidence, well, one either attains to the base of nothingness right here and right now, or else one resolves upon it with wisdom, and on the dissolution of the body after death, it's possible that the evolving consciousness may pass on to rebirth in the base of nothingness. And this, bhikkhus, is declared to be the first way directed to the base of nothingness, the arupa dhatu, the formless realm. All right, does everybody understand where we're at? Okay, so we are about to read a line that I think is really significant. So it's at this point where the Buddha has now told us 3 ways to the imperturbable, the 4th jhana. And now we've heard 1 way to get to the formless realm of nothingness. But listen to the next line. The Buddha says, again, bhikkhus, a noble disciple gone to the forest, or to the root of a tree, or to an empty hut, considers thus. Even before we hear what we are considering, I want you to notice that it seems like we've only now gone on retreat. We've only now really started to now, in a way, do the meditation. It makes me wonder if everything up until this point was just vipassana. Just in a way considering and distancing oneself. But if we read this sort of like as a manual, there's been a lot of training going on even before we seek out an empty hut or a tree or a place to do a kind of a retreat. So maybe I'm making a bigger deal of that than needs be, but I don't know. So at this point, the Buddha says, yeah, now you can go find a nice forest, root of a tree, or an empty hut. And now think this way, consider thus. This is void of self. This is void of a self or of what belongs to a self. When one practices in this way and frequently abides thus, the mind acquires confidence in this base. So, now that we've found the root of a tree or an empty hut, we are now doing a much deeper vipassana, and this is basically the vipassana of anatta, the vipassana of no self. But let's kind of analyze this. So the practitioner thinks this is void of a self. It's void of what belongs to a self. We could be here all night and for weeks and weeks and weeks trying to kind of decipher what this means. But let me give you a basic way to think about it. This teaching of no self, which is what they're talking about here, it's very subtle. And what it is, it's a very subtle difference between, well, on the one hand, it's the idea that we think that like experience like if you're watching this or you're listening to this, there's one idea we have, which is that this experience is happening to somebody. It's like happening to somebody versus a sort of emergent self that is the experience, not a subject to whom experience is happening, but the actual experience itself. It is a very subtle but huge difference between those two, between the idea of this is happening to somebody, or this is somebody doing something, or the idea that this is mine. So that's the idea that, well, so the Buddha says that you should consider that this is void of a self, that this is void of what belongs to a self, versus, hi, it's me. Like my cup? Like, the idea that there's a me here and there's my stuff, me and mine, versus not me and mine. Again, we could be here a long time discussing this, but does that general description make sense? Again, I want to remind you that the idea that this is happening to somebody, this is where we get the idea of our life. As if it's a possession. And it's the idea of when I was a kid. When all that stuff happened to me. Which is different than talking about the experience of that versus the idea of, oh no, that was me. And that was me, and that was me, and that was me. So this idea of an experience in which that sense of a subject drops out, it's big. This is not like, just like, whoops, where'd myself go? It is cultivated first by transcending the neediness, the realm of desire, and then even transcending the realm of form, and then eventually getting into this base of nothingness. So the first way to get into the base of nothingness was meditating on the impermanence of form. The second way to get into the base of nothingness is to meditate on no self. So the idea that this is void of a self and void of what belongs to a self. And then one gets confident in that. One practices that, returns to that over and over until they develop full confidence. All right, we got a little further to go than I thought, so we're going to start moving ahead. Third access to nothingness. Again, bhikkhus. A noble disciple considers thus: I am not anything belonging to anyone anywhere, nor is there anything belonging to me in anyone anywhere. When one practices in this way and frequently abides thus, the mind acquires confidence in that base, and once there's full confidence, one either attains to the base of nothingness right here and now, or resolves upon it with wisdom, and on the dissolution of the body after death, it's possible that the evolving consciousness may pass on to rebirth in the base of nothingness. And that's declared to be the third way directed towards the base of nothingness. By the way, the second path, the path of, oh, no self, no belonging to self. That's sometimes called the twofold no self. There's twofold, which is basically about me and mine. The one I just read is called the fourfold no self. And that's the idea that I'm not anything belonging to anyone anywhere, nor is there anything belonging to me in anyone anywhere. This is this is a teaching that I'm often giving, like I'm often just kind of inserting it in there. It's this idea that the self or whatever is a thing. And it's the problem with thinking that the self is a thing, then it needs to be somewhere. And then it can like have things and all of that. Whereas if you kind of get into this deeper understanding of a quote self, that self isn't a thing and it isn't anywhere is the thing. And it certainly isn't anything belonging to anyone anywhere. This is what I meant by my life. What a funny idea, right? But notice how much that idea trips us up. But it's a funny idea when you actually think about it, right? So those are our 3 access points to the base of nothingness. Everybody okay with that? So we've went from the realm of desire to the realm of form to the formless realm. But as you know, that's what the Buddha learned before he became enlightened, was how to get into all those different realms, and he wasn't impressed. So there's further to go. Again, bhikkhus. A noble disciple considers thus: sensual pleasures here and now, and sensual pleasures in lives to come, sensual perceptions here and now, and sensual perceptions in lives to come, material forms here and now, and material forms in lives to come, perceptions of material forms here and now, and perceptions of material forms in lives to come, perceptions of the imperturbable, and perceptions of the base of nothingness. All are perceptions. Where these perceptions cease without remainder, that is the peaceful, that is the sublime, namely, the base of neither perception nor non-perception. And when one practices in this way and frequently abides that way, the mind acquires confidence in that base of neither perception nor non-perception. And once there's full confidence, one either attains to that base of neither perception nor non-perception right here and now, or else they resolve upon it with wisdom, and upon the dissolution of the body after death, it's possible that the evolving consciousness might pass on to rebirth in the base of neither perception nor non-perception. And this, bhikkhus, is declared to be the way directed to the base of neither perception nor non-perception. Any questions about that? I would want to mention for everybody that one of the reasons why I really like this sutta is by this reference to perceptions. And then this funny idea that like, oh yeah, even the imperturbable is still a perception. And then we get to this, yeah, and even the idea of nothingness, like the base of nothingness, it's still a perception. I like this sutra because by doing that, it gives you a little bit more understanding of why would you then want to get to a state of neither, like no perception, or neither perception nor non-perception. Oh, because perceptions are Maya. Perceptions are illusions in that way. So we would want to, in a way, get out of all that. But as you know, the base of neither perception nor non-perception is not the be-all to end-all. There's one more sort of place to go. So when all of that was said about the imperturbable and about nothingness and neither perception nor non-perception, when all of that was said, the Venerable Ananda said to the Blessed One, the Buddha, "Venerable Sir, here a bhikkhu is practicing like this. It might not be, and it might not be mine. It will not be, and it will not be mine. What exists, what has come to be, that I am abandoning." Thus they attain equanimity. Venerable Sir, does such a bhikkhu attain nirvana? There's a lot of things to fill in with that. So what's happening here, Ananda is, or I should say the sutra, but Ananda is paraphrasing, like big time paraphrasing, a giant like paragraph. It's a giant stock paragraph, which is about somebody going through the process of like, well, it's about this idea of it might not be, and it might not be mine. It's sort of like a skeptical doubt about things. So you go through a period of skeptical doubt, and then you come to this idea of what exists, what has come to be. I'm going to abandon all that. I don't want to go through it. It's not actually even worth it. You just need to know that Ananda is reciting back to the Buddha a classic formula of somebody like moving through a kind of a practice or moving through a process and eventually reaching what it translates as equanimity, but I want you to know that that's that idea of upekkha or upeksha. Upeksha is the relinquishing, the letting go of good, bad, pleasure, pain, all of those. Yeah, it's equanimous, but it's about this kind of relinquishment. So Ananda's basically asking the Buddha, hey, Buddha, if somebody goes through the whole process and eventually even achieves the state where they've abandoned everything and reached upeksha, does such a person achieve nirvana? And the Buddha says, a bhikkhu here, Ananda, might. They might attain nirvana. Another bhikkhu over here, they might not attain nirvana. And Ananda wants to know, what is the cause and reason, Venerable Sir? Why a bhikkhu over here might attain nirvana, while a bhikkhu over here might not attain nirvana? Here, Ananda, a bhikkhu is practicing thus. It might not be, and it might not be mine. It will not be, and it will not be mine. What exists, what has come to be, that I am abandoning. Thus, that person obtains equanimity. And they delight in that equanimity. They welcome that equanimity. And they remain holding on to that equanimity. As they do so, this consciousness becomes dependent upon it and clings to it. A bhikkhu with clinging, Ananda, does not attain nirvana. But, Venerable Sir, when that bhikkhu clings, what does he cling to? to the base of neither perception nor non-perception, Ananda. And Ananda says, well, when that bhikkhu clings, Venerable Sir, it seems that they cling to the best object of clinging. And the Buddha agrees. When that bhikkhu clings, Ananda, they cling to the best object of clinging. For this is the best object of clinging, namely, the base of neither perception nor non-perception. And here, Ananda, a bhikkhu is practicing thus. It might not be, and it might not be mine. It will not be, and it will not be mine. What exists, what has come to be, that I am abandoning. Thus they obtain upeksha, or equanimity. And they do not cling to that equanimity. They don't welcome it. They don't remain holding on to it. And since they do so, their consciousness does not become dependent upon it, and it does not cling to it. A bhikkhu without clinging, Ananda, attains nirvana. Oh, it is wonderful, Venerable Sir. It's marvelous. The Blessed One indeed has explained to us the crossing of the flood in dependence upon one support or another. But, Venerable Sir, what is noble liberation? Here, Ananda, a noble disciple considers thus: sensual pleasures here and now, and sensual pleasures in lives to come, sensual perceptions here and now, and sensual perceptions in lives to come, material forms here and now, and material forms in lives to come, perceptions of forms here and now, and perceptions of forms in lives to come, perceptions of the imperturbable, perceptions of the base of nothingness, and perceptions of the base of neither perception nor non-perception. This is the limit of identity. This is as far as identity extends. This is the deathless, namely, liberation of the mind through not clinging. Let's talk about that real quick, because there's something I want to talk about that happened earlier. So the first thing is there's that funny exchange about clinging to the base of neither perception or non-perception. And Ananda's like, wow, if somebody's clinging to that, they're clinging to the best thing you could possibly cling to. And notice that the Buddha agrees and says, yeah, like if you got to cling to something, that's the best thing to cling to, right? So that right there, I think, is a really important little clue for understanding when Ananda, when he says, oh, it's so wonderful, oh, so marvelous, he says, the Buddha, the Blessed One, has explained to us crossing the flood. So that's an idea of like crossing over to nirvana. But he says that the Buddha explained to us crossing the flood in dependence upon one support or another. What we want to notice is that this is a process, and you do not just go from zero to enlightenment. It is a process of dependence upon supports. So the first thing is you have to, in a way, disentangle your mind from the world of sensual pleasures. And so the Buddha sets up a base, and it's the base of the realm of form. He sets up an upaya. It's the upaya of be exalted, be abundant. Don't be a lowlife. Don't be a fool. And the upaya of convincing you that it is silly to cling and attach to little sensual pleasures, that's the first step. Oh, this is so much more pleasurable, not needing things. Don't stay there. The Buddha sets up another base, and you take another step. And then the Buddha sets up another base, and you take another step and another step until finally you're at this neither perception nor non-perception. And again, that's if you got to cling to something, that's the best thing to cling to. But I just want to point out the way that the sutta is functioning. It's this step-by-step process. So that's the first thing. I wanted to point out Ananda's declaration that the Buddha explains to us the crossing of the flood in dependence upon one support after another. And then, just when you thought it was over, we get the idea that even perceptions of the base of neither perception nor non-perception, right? That all of that is being transcended. And the Buddha declares that this is the limit of the Sakkaya, the true self, what they translate as identity. The Buddha's talking about how he has explained the limit of identity. And then declaring that the limit of identity, this is Amrita, the deathless, right? I always like sharing that with everybody, that word, Amrita, deathless, it's where we get this word ambrosia, the idea of an elixir of immortality. It's coming from this Buddhist idea of the deathless, namely, liberation of the mind through not clinging. I want everybody to go back to that part that we were talking about, where first there's the meditation on that this is void of self and what belongs to a self. Then there's the even deeper meditation of this self is not anything belonging to anyone, anywhere. So, in other words, when we started this meditation tonight, we might have been, clinging to our stuff. But then, realm of desire, we're done. But then we might be clinging to form. Go further, go further. Then you might be clinging, you probably are clinging to self-identity. So forget about the stuff. This is the very clinging to the idea that there is a self to have stuff. And so we go through those couple of meditations of not even clinging to self or anything belonging to a self. So put all of that together, and we get to this idea that the deathless, enlightenment, nirvana, is the liberated mind that is not clinging. Well, actually, no, it's about being liberated from not clinging. And we said this last week. I want to repeat it. What we want to notice is it's right here. I mean, enlightenment, nirvana, the possibility of it. It's right here because it is about clinging or not. So we want to look at clinging. And if we're interested in not doing that, the Buddha has set up a step-by-step process for crossing the flood. All right. Thus, Ananda, I've taught the way directed to the imperturbable. I've taught the way directed to the base of nothingness. I've taught the way, directed to the base of neither perception nor non-perception. I've taught the crossing of the flood in dependence upon one support or another. I have taught the noble liberation. What should be done for his disciples out of compassion by a teacher who seeks their welfare and has compassion for them? That I have done for you, Ananda. Look around, Ananda. There's these roots of the trees. There's these empty huts. Meditate, Ananda. Do not delay, or else you'll regret it later. This is our instruction for you. That's what the Blessed One said. The Venerable Nanda was satisfied and delighted in the Blessed One's words. All right. Any questions, comments, or ideas about this, the imperturbable, or nothingness, or neither perception nor non-perception, or nirvana? Noe?
There we go. Yes, lovely, lovely, lovely. And yet my mind keeps jumping around to nihilism. And then my mind keeps jumping around to, and this is the way, and one day you'll get it. It's still jumping to clinging. It's still, and even that thing at the end, you know, do not delay, or else you later regret it later. What is that? Honestly,
Yep.
Because it does, after this beautiful thing of, yeah, here and now, here and now, here and now, but do it now or you'll regret it later. It's a weird twist. It's for me. And it's kind of like, why is it that I understand it here and now, but then there's this wagging of the finger, you know? And perhaps that's my perception of the perception. I'll try not to perceive what's not perceivable. But again, it's that nihilistic thing of like, along the lines too, if I may, that thing of deathless. Deathless, you know. Wow, what was going on 2,500 years ago that everybody was so trying to get away from death as we are today?
Only 2,500 years ago?
Yeah, only. And before and since. And it's always that idea of, you know, and I get part of it, but I'm questioning that language there, if I may. Thank you.
No, I think it's a great question. So I was anticipating this question, but I thought it was going to come earlier, and what it is if we go back to that second meditation on no self, and the noble disciple thinks this way: I'm not anything belonging to anyone anywhere. Now, somebody, not Noe, but somebody might raise their hand and be like, isn't that a contradiction? Right? This idea of I, and now all of this stuff about no self. But we need to be careful, Noe, because if we go back to the first meditation on no self, when the noble disciple considers thus, this is void of a self, right? If you hear something along the lines of like, oh, you mean I don't exist? That's annihilationism. That's nihilism. To hear the teaching that was just given and to say, oh, so I don't exist, so there's no self? Like, no self? That's an extreme view. You went too far. In other words, to put it sort of simply, there's something going on here, but to think of it through the lens of subject, object, self, and all that's, you missed it. But there is the mind that's hearing this in that way. There is that. And that shouldn't delay. That should not delay. If you see what I'm saying, Noe. So yeah. There's in a way work to be done in that sense, but we don't want to be always here and now. And Noe, that's why I think the Buddha is really saying, like, look around, there's trees, there's empty huts right here and now. Like, don't wait. So I agree, Noe. I hear you that the end has a slightly finger wagging tone to it. I hear you, but I think it's more encouragement than admonition or admonishment. So, yeah. Any other questions, comments, or ideas? All right. Well, I hope you all attain to the imperturbable and beyond. If not, we will continue next week. We are still making our way through this section. So yeah, I think we're probably going to move on to Sutta 107 next week. Thank you. Awesome. Thank you all as usual for joining us, being here on Sunday nights. It's always such a pleasure.